Past 7 o'clock, I'll go ahead and call the Public Works and Public Utilities Committee meeting to order. Go ahead and stand for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any comments from citizens?
Yes.
Go ahead and come and state your name and address.
All right. At this microphone.
Yes, please.
Hello. Daniel
Yeah,
Baylor.
it's,
Pardon?
that's not turned on. Well,
Oh.
no. It just,
Speak loudly.
Daniel De La Rosa, that's 429 South Collier Street, Centralia, Missouri. And recently, a bunch of stakes were moved around our property, destroying the property line and the grid that it was founded on. And this was done evidently without the knowledge of part of the council, if not all of it. So I would like to ask Mr. Borman what his justification is for moving those stakes.
I didn't set any stakes.
Yes, you
I set
did.
some stakes.
Pardon?
I set stakes that weren't there previously.
Yes, you did. You replaced stakes, existing stakes with your stakes that are 20 feet off the mark and a foot off the mark going against the grain of the track, which is pegged to block 2. So obviously you can't do that.
Oh, I see. And you know this how?
I know this because anyone can read those maps, and I do have some experience. I drafted for the fiber, when they were putting in the web, I drafted those maps, much like what Mr. Stewart does at the county, and put the surveyor's maps together into AutoCAD, and then those were composited so that people could read where they were on the street.
Okay.
So I do have some experience, and I
Do you
do
have a
know what
license
I'm
as a
looking
land
at.
surveyor?
I don't need a license to look at that. I don't need a license to send a report off. I want to know what your justification is for moving those stakes. I will understand what you're saying.
I didn't move any stakes. I set
Okay, you
stakes.
replaced stakes, and now they're
No, I didn't
false.
replace any. There weren't any there to start with.
That's not true. You dug up stakes in Mike's yard. You dug up stakes all along the Rollins Street, and you replaced them with your stakes in other positions, mostly 20 feet back and then a foot off.
If you say so.
Well, you did. You were seen by many people to have done this.
Okay.
What's your justification for moving the stakes back so that now you have 20 feet more property?
I didn't.
You did.
No, I didn't.
You did.
Mr. Dillon,
You have moved the you have moved
And
the,
that is not
You
anything
moved
that
the
this council
330
is
mark
concerned about
back.
either.
he moved the 330 mark. The stakes are placed now such that the 330 mark is 20 feet back. And then evidently it's a block off, it's a foot off this way, because it ends up overlapping, not only overlapping my neighbor's property, but overlapping the tract, which is pegged to block 2, which is across the alley. So even if you move those property lines, that tract would still be there, and now you would have a jagged edge to the edge of your block.
I would
It's a
suggest if you have
discrepancy.
a problem that you hire a surveyor.
We did hire a surveyor, and that's exactly
You
what he
haven't
found.
finished the survey.
He did finish the survey, and I have a map of it,
Okay.
and I can post that online if you'd like. Anyway, it shows, and it was turned into the county, and it shows a 20-foot overlap.
I just had one, whatever Don was doing the other day, or whenever this was, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Borman, but that was as Borman's survey.
Right, that is correct, and that's why I want to
So-
make a good distinction that it was
How-
Warren's surveying, and not quite, because he's occupying a council position. Are you saying that any surveyor can come in here and just move stakes? Replace, excuse me?
The city does not review all surveys that are done. In fact, the city doesn't review any surveys that are done unless it's for specifically an issue that comes before the council.
Oversight of surveys is done at the state level. And
They
it's
don't-
about a 12-letter acronym for it, so I don't quite recall the name.
Well, when I understand you come into my office and we talked about this. I understand that you have a dispute about where the property lines are. And you see it one way, and Mr. Brown sees it another.
Well, you replace stakes. You can't just dig up stakes, throw them out, and then replace them with something else. They also still have a survey hole there.
And people do things that bother each other all the time, but one of my
This has
questions
nothing to do with something like that. This is about stealing 20 feet of property. Stealing
So
20 feet of property.
how is this a council matter tonight?
How is this a council matter? Because he's doing it in the capacity, evidently, of running behind the council. You don't control anything? You're gonna just let any surveyor come into town and move stakes around?
The city does not, first of all, there's a question about when any stakes were moved. He did, as I understand it, he did a survey. He has a survey that you have a dispute with. That would not come before the city council.
Well, how are you allowing, really, you're not enforcing the law? How come you're allowing someone to just stake a fence 20 feet over the property line into my neighbor's yard and partially into our property?
To make a ludicrously exaggerated example, if somebody were to go across the fence and choke their neighbor to death, that is a state court issue. The city police might handle that if it's within the city.
Well, that's another thing. See, you had the city
But the
police
state-
over there enforcing it.
I did not have the city
Well,
police over
someone
there
did.
enforcing it. It may have been
Okay.
requested.
Okay. First of all, let's be clear. Okay? What you're speaking of truly isn't a council matter. Two, the police department, me.
Mm-hmm.
The police department was over there to allow a man to do his job. Whether you say that's right or wrong, the police department's over there because a man ought to be allowed to do his job. And I know you agree with that.
I do agree with that.
Man ought to be allowed to do his job. If you want to contest where Borman surveying, and trust me, I'd say this, if he wasn't on the council, if he was about to go to jail, or he's about to win the Powerball, I don't care. If you wish to contest those findings, Dan, then there is a route which to do that. But it's not here. None of us have the enforcement capacity at which to do that. If you truly wish to contest the survey, then that's a circuit court matter to be filed properly through the circuit court. It's true, Don Borman, who is the guru of Borman surveying, is on the council. However, it has nothing to do with the city business. We didn't hire him. Am I making sense here, sir?
Yes, but I respectfully disagree. Why did you not enforce the property rights of the person whose deed is filed with the county? Why were those not enforced and him not allowed to put a fence?
Wait here, we're done here. We're
Why,
done.
why would he not? Why would you not protect those rights? That's what I would argue.
Because
Since
it's
those are on the books.
it has nothing to do with us.
Okay.
Guys, you
We're
got
done.
3 minutes to say his
We're
piece. I don't think we're
All right.
getting anywhere engaged.
I think the proper course of action would be to file this in civil court with the lawyer.
Well, I do think this needs to be addressed, that the police should have been defending the neighbor's right, since he has the legal property line, he hasn't even turned in a map. Anyway,
I don't know all that stuff.
well then, I mean, you
But
can't
the
just
thing
have people
is-
running around saying, okay, I'm gonna make a map, and then destroying someone else's property.
Right. And
That's a city matter.
There's a legal course of action.
That's
to
a
take care
city
of it.
matter.
Yes.
You know,
No, it's not a city matter.
I should have been able to call the
If
police.
we approve a plat, then we kind of look at those property lines and all that.
So you're just gonna let
No.
people fight
Okay.
willy-nilly over them?
Uh,
So I can just go
Next
pull
time.
that fence up tomorrow, right?
I stand corrected. I don't know.
I can just pull up that fence post tomorrow, doesn't matter,
And,
right?
and then guess what? Then you'll be facing something.
Okay, now why would I face a charge and not the person who was putting it in the first place, since it's over the
Yeah.
property line?
Because you don't have a surveyor that has staked
What-
the property.
I wish I was a lawyer, then I could probably answer your question, but.
My surveyor turned our map into the county.
Okay.
I said
How-
we
how
move
long
on to the
ago?
meeting.
How long ago was that?
This was about 3 months ago. Well, no. Maybe 4. But
Okay.
we also have years of documents.
Okay. Best course of action, I think, would be to get a lawyer
Well-
and just run it through the civil courts.
But the city shouldn't be allowing a surveyor to just
All
come in
right,
and
sir,
really
I need to go
skip.
ahead and move on with our meeting, sir. You've had
That's
your 3
fine.
minutes. Let's move on to water and sewer department. We have an activity report in our packet. Any questions or comments?
Those frozen meters didn't break or nothing, did they, Mike?
No,
They just froze up.
people left lids off and just, that's all the problem. We just stalled them out real quick, hit them with wet torch, most of them real quick, and they froze them right up.
Okay, moving on to water, water plant improvement updates.
We have had Greg Modlish from 360 Engineers looking at some possible, and that's actually at the bottom of the agenda, but it relates to this. Look at some possible projects where we could use, we could borrow money and pay it back based on energy savings. One of those projects we were looking at was the possibility of using, reviewing the accuracy of our water meters, and if they were inaccurate enough, there might be enough savings by charging the full amount of water use to pay for some of the other projects that are still left over from the 2008 study that Burns and McDonald did. And during the last visit we had with Greg, we discovered that there was kind of an error in his calculation, and so I don't know for certain, but I'm not nearly as certain that that's going to be able to be a source of revenue to pay for these projects. So I think what basically, well, what I want to let you know is that we have budgeted the remainder of the payment on the aerator in next year's budget, and then as we get in sort of as far as anything else right now, I'm not specifically looking at any major improvements until we do, a full. I'd like to do a capital improvement. One of the things I'd like to do when I'm talking about and I'll get into this more next week, but with a comprehensive plan update. I'd like to work with, and I've talked to. I'd like to work with the Mid-Missouri Regional Planning Commission. I talked to Ed Sigmund about this, and I think sort of a general infrastructure capital improvement plan to take what we have. Mostly it's notes by Lynn, but he's got an idea of what he wants to do for the next several years. So he had an idea, and obviously as it gets farther away, any plan gets fuzzier. Put something together that would be with public input and getting a little bit of broader input into those projects. And I talked to Mike, there's nothing that we think, correct me if I'm wrong, has to happen this year or 17. There's some, one of the things we talked about is the possibility of just renewing the media in one of the sand filters. That's a project that we're talking thousands of dollars, not tens of thousands of dollars. And I think each one's about $7,000 for a bed, something right around
No,
there.
actually, they're probably about 3,000 to 4,000.
3,000 to 4,000, okay.
Per,
Yeah.
we got 3 filter beds right now. So.
Right. So even we did all of them, they're $5,000. We're talking about $15,000 total. So those are we can pretty much do that within the the regular budget, the 210 line item. So so anyway, right now don't expect anything really huge and exciting for next year's budget, which is the start of sort of leads into the next topic. But if anybody got any questions, particularly about water plant improvements, the quote we got, the very early quote for the air scour equipment, which was very handy, very useful, was about $103,000. For $103,000, I can get Mike another person for more than 2 years with benefits. So, and he can, you know, and he'd be available to do other chores as well. So, you know, eventually that might pay for itself, but that'd be a long payoff for something that would be very handy. There are some other projects in terms of improving efficiency of pumps that probably could be done, but I'm going to take a little bit more deliberate approach. That's what I have.
So then moving on to capital budget.
Great. So in your packet there was a preliminary budget line items for capital, particularly in water. Like I said, all I'm looking at is doing the aerator, and then I put in $15,000 for water plant engineering. That is, we have a 2008 plant. I don't know if we need to spend that much money, but that gives us and I may make that smaller as we get closer to March, whatever, 21st, the day we would probably adopt budget. But we may not need to spend that this year in terms of engineering, but we may want to, depending upon how the comprehensive plan process works, we may be towards the end of the year want to actually bring in some technical assistance to design some of the, you know, to do design work on the next phases. So,
Then moving on to replacement pump bid. We have the bid in the packet.
yeah, and that's actually should be in the sewer department. But since it's budgeted, since it's on the agenda here, in this year's budget, we budgeted $6,500 for a replacement pump. This is not needed today, but if the pump breaks down in the fountain lift station, we've got a backup on hand because that's a pretty big deal, and it can also be used at the lift.
Overland's low fields,
Yeah.
it's the same size, basically at the same time. I will let you know, in the last week, we pulled those pumps 3 times out there. We're having so much trouble with rags, so, and according to Randy, what he had in there today was enough, but he like never got it all out, so. May have to look at possibly putting something in front of that, maybe chew some of that up a little bit more before it gets there. We've got a bar screen there, but it just gets so full at times that it's gonna go over it and get to it. But we're gonna need this other pump before long, because it's gonna tear an impeller up. We're gonna be down to 1. You take the chance of that with a heavy rain, and we could be in problems, so.
What did you say the pump cost?
We have 2 bids for the S&S is at $6,080, including freight. And the all-in cost for Alliance Pump and Mechanical is $68.41. I assume, I didn't get a chance to ask you, but there's no reason why we wouldn't take the low bid with S&S, is there?
We can, yeah, either one would be fine.
Is that a new pump from S&S?
It's a new pump.
Now, this old pump, can we get parts to rebuild it for a
Yeah,
backup?
and that's what the plan is. We'll just, if it's still good to go. If one of the others goes out, we'll just keep switching out.
So we'll always have a
Take one of
spare.
them, yeah.
This is, now, we had a lot more lift stations in Fulton, but we usually kept a backup pump.
And I
Just for.
can tell you, anytime we've had to have this thing pulled and worked on, it runs about $4,000 just to have them worked on, if they have a complete breakdown. And we've done it about 3 times on this one pump, so it's time to make it back up and get something in there a little better.
Is this still those wet wipes basically?
Whatever they are, we just can't tell what they are.
Well, I suspect that's what they are.
About that, I don't know if they are, they're about that long and about that wide. We put bar screens in throughout the west side of town to try to pinpoint where they're coming from. We'll catch a few here and a few there, but nothing enough to tell exactly what it is.
It doesn't sound like, is that what you're talking about, flushable wipes
Yes.
for adults that are out there?
Well, everything like the Swifter or something, we
Swifter.
originally started out
Yeah.
thinking they're too big for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
super.
But everybody is fighting these right now.
That's weird.
What,
Is this something that, maybe James could take a picture of? Maybe somebody would recognize what they're putting it down.
We've got pictures, but we can't tell what they are.
well, I wonder if you send a letter out to people on that side of town, and tell them that there's a problem with rags.
We put notes,
Yeah.
I put notes out.
Just for one time,
It did die off a little bit there, but not enough to. Like I say, we were down probably once every 2 months, and right now 3 times in the last week.
Wow. But I mean, I know that other cities are having this problem too, and it's causing a tremendous amount of money.
Yeah.
If you catch people, you can try to get them to pay for it. But you gotta be able to pinpoint who did it.
Yeah. I mean, we've actually made little bar screens to put in there, and we just can't pinpoint where they're coming from.
Is it of volume, you would guess it's more than one person?
I would think it would have to be.
Or you said
What
they're
we're
coming,
doing.
you're catching them at different places
Yeah.
too, right?
Yeah.
In different
Not-
trunk lines?
Don't say anything here, but we thought it was the school. About August, it really starts picking up. And I talked to the maintenance guys out there to see if they're using new kind of towels. Actually they've got a manhole coming right out of the new school out there, thought that was it. Nothing, it's just paper, so. And we moved over to the interceptor by Ball's property to catch everything, Tip-Ball, Adams, Doty. Caught a little bit there, caught some up by the garden center. So there's no rhyme or reason for what we're finding, it's never a big amount.
and it's paper, it's not
No.
some sort of plastic product.
It's something that won't break down.
Wouldn't be like a nursing home or something, would it?
I've talked to them down here and they're not used to anything. You know, they were more than, they showed me everything they had, it's not, because that's the only one that's on it. Elementary school also comes that way, nothing there.
I'm pretty sure it's coming from south of CIS.
I'm saying
My
that.
house.
Alright.
We throw all of our different things in the trash can.
We'll investigate further.
And we're still looking at, we're still placing, trying to figure it out. And we thought maybe with the heavy rains that would help them wash it down. And sometimes heavy rains do seem like they pack it in a little heavier on the pumps. Sometimes it can be 2 weeks no rain, and all of a sudden they're there. So
You need a motion on that tonight?
So you think like a grinder or something in front of it, or?
there's a lot of people doing that, but that's the newest, latest, greatest thing to sell everybody now. So I need to find out what's working and what isn't.
Because if you get a, depending on what it's made out of, you'll just bind, some of those have teeth and it just tangles up in there. It's like a,
Yeah, the stuff
Garbage
doesn't, you
disposal.
can take it, stretch it, and put a spade and try to drive it to the ground, it goes down in the ground and bring it right back up. It's that tough.
I want to clean with this product. What is it?
well, not, you might want to rinse it first. We'll get you
I
one.
want to know what's in
We
it.
get you one. I know where you get
More like this.
There's some good stools out there that are doing some good job of flushing, because I don't know how this stuff's getting through.
How big are
Not like that, not that wide.
Those are pretty big.
Yeah.
That's not. We do need a motion to accept.
There's no restaurants or anything going out there, is there?
Sneed Street, from down Jefferson, all the way down there, picking everything up here.
Are they
just to
dog
Sims.
pads? Maybe like
I
pads
don't
where
think
they.
so. I don't think,
Like those puppy pads that you
Uh-huh.
train puppies with on your
Because
house?
those are big.
yeah.
And those whole.
Next time you catch some, let me take a look at it.
That might be why they're putting them down below the person.
You might not want to bring them inside.
I'm not suggesting you bring them inside city hall.
We do not want to display here.
Because those are that size, I'm just saying.
Don't get
Why do you have tell what they are by the time
No,
they
but she doesn't know.
Had some. Yeah, you don't.
My little dog wears diapers, thank you very much.
Let's blame it on the cats.
Actually, you might want to take a sample of it to the university, talk to folks on it from environmental sciences, see if they can find out what it is.
Yeah.
I know Boonville had did that, and they didn't come up with anything, but they can tell you what kind of material it is, but they don't know what it is. So,
That is
All right, before we move on completely, we do need a motion to accept the lowest and best bid from S&S Motors in Mexico, right?
So moved.
Excellent.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Right.
Pardon me, what was that bid?
$6,800, no, $6,080 when you add in the freight.
And that was for the replacement pump?
That's for the replacement pump and freight, yes.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
This is 58 plus freight, 182 plus freight. So the example. Does that make sense? I don't know how much the freight is.
All right, moving on to sewer capital budget requests. Do that. You have more than we already talked about now.
Well, in the sewer department, oh, okay, so you've done, okay,
C1.
yeah,
And we just replaced the pump.
yeah, on the sewer department, we're gonna continue our program for sewer main lining. We're asking for $45,000 again, or for $45,000 this year. We had 40 last year. Mike and I looked over the list, and we think we can knock off 3 streets. But as we go on, there are some big projects ahead. For instance, I think Lakeview could use a lot of work.
I'd like to go from Kellogg all the way to Central Street on Lakeview. That's the main trunk for everything, football field between Jefferson and the tracks. And I'd like to get that main trunk done and then work on some of the side streets next after that. But we're gonna have to get Lakeview from that point. Now, from Kellogg to Jefferson, we replaced almost all of that with Miko Engineering, probably about 5 years ago, I think it was, so.
That had a sag in the line.
Yeah, bad sag.
And then we also have, but we're asking for $7,500 for manhole lining, which is essentially the same concept with a different material, and you're going vertical rather than horizontal.
I'll probably use that Midwest cementitious. I've got another bid from another guy that gives me cheaper, and everything he's done has worked great.
And he was significantly less.
Yeah, he's considerably cheaper.
He did that one on Howard Burton, did he?
He did one on Howard Burton, the one behind the pool hall over on Bruton and stuff. One behind the pool hall was just like a full garden hose. At one point, that's how bad it was leaking. It dries along.
But he's local, right?
No, he just had a Festus, I think, is where he's at.
But the others are coming from further?
One was in Illinois, and there's another company out of Kansas City.
And then finally, I have $10,000 budgeted for equipment replacement under 3128, and 3128 is land application, so that would be probably tires maybe, or some other, basically having a line item prepared for whatever gives out, if anything, on the land application system. We have some stuff that's getting pretty old. Last spring when we got the farmers together, we talked about some different possibilities. Now everybody should have 2 spare tires, is that right, Mike? And then we've got some other the on-hand spares. So this is either to replace those to be ready for next year, or possibly towards the end of the year, if there's some preventative maintenance that might be useful.
Pivotal maintenance.
Pivotal maintenance? It could be preventive, pivotal. It could be pivotal. That's a good call.
Anything in other underwater and sewer department? All right, moving on to public works. There is an activity report in our packet. Any questions or comments?
Trash trucks still holding up pretty well.
They're both up and running. Knock on wood. One of them breaks down, I'll call you tomorrow.
Okay.
Oh,
Truck 89 is back in service after
Yeah.
having its facelift, as it were.
When was the battery disconnect?
There's just a battery disconnect. I don't know if it just wasn't working, so we changed out. Every now and then that truck just decides not to run. So that's something they said to try, and it seems to be working so far, so.
We're not looking to replace any trash trucks this year, but maybe next year. We replaced the newer truck in 2014, fiscal year 2014.
When the old one burned out.
Yeah. And so we got out of the regular, it was.
Regular rotation.
I think it was calendar year 13, but budget year 14. It was after.
It was
April.
late fall, I think, when we got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and that was about $162,000 net cost. So we probably need to replace the older truck. It'd be the cheaper way to go, and that would we probably want to replace it with a used, but not as used as the one we've got. We could look at buying a new one, or maybe go one more year and get a new one. There's another possibility. And that one of the things we talked about looking at this summer was the possibility of doing another study to see if we want to take bids on trash service, including bidding against, making a bid ourselves versus the private sector. And see, based on, part of this has to do with staffing. Remember, he's got 5 people in his staff, and he's got 20% of his staff that's considering retirement soon.
That's quite a bit out of each department, though. If you want to look at it that way.
Yeah, well, right. It's but it's half of the sanitation. It's roughly half of the sanitation departments. But it would be a time to take a look at it.
Will we still do our own recycling since we have
Probably.
Well, we don't have it coming yet. We made an application. So we're anyway. So that is. We're still in the activity report, so I don't want to spoil all the fun.
All right.
I got it myself.
Moving on to streets, Jefferson Street Sidewalk Project update.
We have all the easements in hand, and we have one last one to record. The bid documents are being reviewed by MoDOT. We should be going out for bids this month or early March. Awarding the bids in April and be ready to get going as soon as school lets out. So everything's on schedule still, essentially.
All right, capital budget requests.
I'm gonna leave the overlay till next week, but because we gave you kind of a very preliminary, very early preliminary look at that, I think already.
Yeah.
Okay, let's back up to the top. We are obligated to make a payment on the wheel loader. We will finish that off in FY 2018. That final payment will be significantly less than $44,000 because, as you remember, we have estimate of expenditures of $61,500 for this year, but remember we got a offsetting revenue which shows up in revenues of 25,000. Was it that we sold? Actually, more than that.
No, it was more than that.
Yeah, I think it was actually.
It's 33, wasn't it?
That's
30. Yeah.
Yeah, the offer we got from.
The trading was like 20, 25.
Right, and then we put it on Gov Deals and we ended up getting
32,
32 or 33. So we still, I mean, if you look at that way, we spent less than we were budgeting this year if you applied that money directly to this line item.
Okay.
So next year we'll pay 44, and then the final year we'll have a much smaller payment. And somehow in this version that I sent you, I did not get the price of the single axle dump truck. I'm looking at that right now. I'm hoping we can afford it. We really need to. Lynn had $87,000 in the budget for his proposed number. I think it's going to be more than that. Boone County just bought one. Of course, they put more on theirs than we probably need to put on ours. But with a plow, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of $120,000.
Does the plow and stuff, would it work with the newer truck?
Well, we can get a plow with the new truck to replace the truck. We're gonna replace the plow truck and the plow that's on it.
The plow with it?
Yeah, the plow that's on it's 15 years old and that's just beat up. I mean, they're just wore out. We're looking at some little bit heavier style plows that are just a little bit heavier duty, and they'll hopefully last a little better.
It also might make it easier for, there's some streets that basically we can only get with the grader right now, and possibly with slightly heavier plow, there might be some there might be some places that we can get. We'll have two vehicles that can. Once you get some traffic on the snow, it packs it down pretty fast, pretty hard. In addition to that, the street department, that's basically all we're looking at getting this year is the wheel loader and the hopefully a single axle dump truck with plow in streets. And I gotta look at a couple. We did get some good news that in terms of the full budget, although health insurance is up, the loggers cost is down slightly, so that's good news. And we've had a good year for sales tax. Just gotta, next week or the week after, I'll have a final first draft. It's also gonna look a little different this year, which I warned you about last year. I'm hoping to make it shorter.
That's good.
And maybe not so many line items where there's no expenditures for 3 years. I think you'll like it.
All right.
Then moving on to sanitation.
One capital budget item in sanitation, I already mentioned it, is the recycling truck. If we get the grant, the cost would be $100,000, probably less, and there would be offsetting revenue in a different part of the budget for 3/4 the cost of the truck. Yeah. I know that the budget for the grant was drafted as if we wanted to buy 2 trucks from Columbia so that we would have a replacement. That's what they were hoping we could do. Well, I made it clear that we'd be happy that we could get by with 1, and we're looking at some other options. Fulton might be trading out their curbside recycling truck, and it's a dual hopper also. So, and Phil's talked to Armor Equipment about an option that we could employ. It would add about, was it $11,000 to it. The Columbia modified their trucks so that you can only load from the right side, which is the safest way to do it. But Columbia also has a lot of 32-foot wide streets, curb and gutter, and they pick up only one side of the street at a time. The way Centralia streets and traffic patterns are, we frequently pick up both sides. Most of our routes are designed to pick up on both sides. Same, so with the recycling truck, if you could get access to, it's a side loading recycling truck. And so if you had bins on both sides, it would work a lot better. That's how it was originally designed. Columbia had the left side removed, but if we went with that truck and got one of them, we could have it modified, and the total cost of the truck would be $66,000, just to make it easy. And we'd pay 3/4 of that. Actually, that doesn't do that. Say it's $60,000, we'd be out 15, and the other 45 would be covered by the grant. So that $100,000 is our net cost to be 25. If we bought a truck for $100,000, it's likely that we won't spend that much. So we'll more likely be out 15 net.
More to follow.
More to follow, yeah. We will. When do they go over those grants? At the,
I think in the March meeting.
They'll make their final, the solid waste district will make their final decision before our budget, in time for me to get it to you, in our budget.
Yeah.
Then they have to go, say Mother May I, to the Department of Natural Resources, and the Department of Natural Resources in the last 4 or 5 years has been a little bit more slow.
So we might not have final decision till July.
It's possible.
2000.
Back when I was running this program.
Well, yeah.
They showed a little bit more trust in the districts back then.
Alright. Storm sewer?
Okay. Back up under, actually it's under street, but it's one of the activities in the street department. 131-8-509. I believe that with the $20,000, we can do a riprap and look at possible reinforcement of the sides to finish out the Mile Street ditch. And I think that we will do better to slow that water down rather than build a canal like we have up to this point, so that when it goes into the park, it won't have the full velocity of coming down straight down a concrete canal.
I was looking at that the other day, and I think if we're using bigger rocks, that it would also slow it down and do the same thing.
I don't know if this one
We've done a little bit of that, Dick, on the other side where the bend is, where it goes back towards Booth. We went in there and straightened that out and did some riprap in a couple areas, and then on the other side of Booth into the park, because it was just washing out and trying to control the banks, and it's been holding good for
Works
about a
good.
year. Yeah.
What size rock you put in there?
We had a mix of a foot, probably 8 inches to over a foot. I mean, we didn't get anything too crazy big in there. Now, North Jefferson, over by Stars ditch right there, we put in 2 foot or bigger, because the bank was starting to slough on me. And I've got to put some more in there yet, but we won't put anything quite that big on that one, probably looking at a foot size.
There would also be a lot more economical, wouldn't
Well, it would be cheaper, but we have a set of plans, and a set of engineering plans that call for a concrete bottom with the block walls, block wall. And the question is can we modify that and do something? We might need to give an engineer to take a look at it. I've always thought that riprap at the bottom of that, even if you put concrete block up, if you got enough riprap in there, it should hold it, I would think. But we probably need to have an engineer verify that it would work.
That's kind of
If you do that, it should slow the water down,
Right.
whereas that concrete is just sending water down there as fast as it'll go.
It goes through the proof edge.
Riprap, it'll allow a little bit of grass to grow up in there, and, it'll be rougher, and it just will, the water won't have the speed going through there, which would be a good thing by the time it gets to the park.
this.
Matt and I discussed this a little bit.
He's closer to an engineer than I am. So, in addition to that, there is $15,000 in there for engineering, not just for this project. The original cost of the concrete ditch, I've been calling it canal, but essentially was 30. I forgot to look at it. It was about $35,000, and that was when the engineering report came out.
About 6 or 8 years, 8, 10.
It could be up to 8. It's been, we haven't sat around for a long time.
Right.
And concrete has not gotten cheaper. So this would still be, even if we spent $15,000 to engineer it, it would still be cheaper. But that's not what that price is for. We also have some other stormwater issues that I like to look at. This is, and I know that we haven't spent. I mean, from time to time, we spent some money on consultants, but this is one where I think we've got an issue over on. I know we have an issue over on Mays Meadows. We've got an issue on. I don't know if we can do anything about Central Street, but or back in that area. But we also have some other storm drainage.
A lot of older storm sewer that we need to rebuild.
Right, and maybe get a design. We could come up with a design for was it Bradford and
yeah, Bradford Street
and Barnes.
Yeah,
but I wouldn't mind having somebody who has an engineering degree look at a possible design. Because one thing you have to do is somehow get that concrete. It was a block, and now the bottom of that box has cracked and pushed up. So you kind of got a flat top and then a W underneath it. So we need to get rid of the W and we need to replace it with something. Whether that means, and ideally without tearing the whole, if we can do it in a way that we don't have to tear the whole thing apart and build a whole new box culvert. You would hate
Box
to go.
culvert?
Yeah.
Or a catch basin?
No, it was box culvert.
Box culvert.
Under Barnes. Barnes in Bradford. It's a very large one.
How large is it?
Yeah, it's probably
5 feet. Yeah.
probably about 80 tall, about 5 feet wide. It's pretty good size. It's way bigger than it needs to be.
Don't put this part in the newspaper, but if I was a little kid, I'd go down there and play in it. Unless the rainwater wouldn't run.
But we also have storm sewer
And
just up from there all the way up to Jim Lee's.
And the base of it is just busted?
Yeah.
Yeah, clear underneath the whole thing. You should have to be.
I don't know how you're gonna do anything without replacing it.
Yeah, I think it's gonna have to come out. The whole thing. But the whole storm sewer all the way back up to the Rose Garden, Chance Gardens there is in need of some replacement.
How long a stretch of it are you looking at?
From Singleton to almost Barnes. Yeah, about a block.
I mean, I have seen, concrete box culvert that was done, in sections, and the individual sections were placed as precast.
What this was, this what they tried to do, but they didn't put a bottom in this one.
And some of that sidewalk is the top of the
Yeah.
box culvert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what it is on Bradford.
Well, I think you're right.
Yeah, the sidewalk's the top, but they poured no bottom in it, or if they did, it's completely gone, and the walls are going like this.
Right. But I don't know how you can salvage anything without
No.
pulling it out and replacing it.
Yeah.
Which might be something where we stage it and get the worst parts first. Because we got to remember, now what's not in here is those two, what are they, 6 foot?
6 to 7 foot.
6 to 7 foot culverts underneath Hubble parking lot and
Pringers.
Pringers over and up towards the track. They actually go under the tracks, right?
Yes.
And the bids for this fiscal year were 6 figures on both of those.
I'm not saying that you couldn't put a foundation underneath of that, but boy, that would be expensive.
Yeah, I don't know. That may be harder.
And the engineering feat in itself.
So most likely we're looking at getting pricing on replacing that box culvert. And maybe, I don't know what happened, like also if there wasn't a bottom, or if the bottom was.
Well, that one had a bottom, but the other part of it doesn't.
Right. Oh, no, I know.
Yeah.
The part under,
Yeah.
yeah, the part under Barnes definitely does.
Yeah, it just rusted and heaved.
I might suggest precast on it, but if the sidewalk on top of it, that's probably not gonna work very well either. Yeah, I mean, if the sidewalk, if the top of it is the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just not gonna fit together as well as what.
No, yeah, it unfortunately won't. And it doesn't need to be probably near as big as it is. 'Cause, I'd say the ditches have been, they've done some storm sewer work over in there, like on Jenkins and stuff, and I don't think it carries as much water as it used to, so it probably doesn't need to be 4x4 box culvert. Probably put in a 30-inch pipe or something.
Well, if we can put a pipe in it, sure.
Yeah,
be a lot
it,
cheaper.
it might be able to put a pipe in there without having to wreck it all out.
So what all I'm asking for right now is, what's based in there right now is, 20,000 to finish Miles Street ditch, and, 15,000 for engineering to look at, both of that project, to make sure that we can come up with a less expensive, and then Mays Meadows, and then Bradford. Yeah, I can think of a couple other ones. I don't know if there's anything it probably doesn't need engineering, but we got a couple other problems, like over by McDonald's on both sides of the street there. That's become seems to have gotten worse this year. You know, it's been wet, but it's not going anywhere. It used to kind of slowly. So that's what, those are my preliminary requests. We've got,
What's the 66,000 for?
that's in this year's budget. I mean, for the, that's the one we've already spent.
Storm sewer lining or?
Oh, okay,
Yeah, that was no chance in South Jefferson.
okay, so that's what we've already spent in the underlying for what we're
Right.
proposing for the future.
Alright, moving on to other. Alright, moving on to the electric department, there's an activity report in our packet, any questions or comments? I will say they came to my house pretty quickly when I had an issue on Friday.
Yeah, we found, that was actually a poor quality control on the actual
I know my lights have been
manufacturer of the
flickering
meter
for
base.
quite some time, but I just.
It's amazing that it worked that well for as long as it did, because they essentially left the bolts that connect the circuit breaker to the bus above and below the circuit breaker, they left them out. They were just sitting there, the connections were together, but they weren't bolted together.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
That must
So-
have been all that flickering. That just
Yeah,
didn't happen.
absolutely.
Seems like in the
So-
morning it was worse. I don't know.
When you're walking around and shaking that
Yeah,
out.
I'm sure, yeah. Well, it's out the easement, but the heat and the cold, I'm sure, contraction and expansion, I'm sure made a
On a
big
windy
difference.
day, no.
You know, so, but,
Well, this is not at the house, but at the.
right, this is where one of it's our meter pedestal in the easement, and
In what we purchased.
yeah, exactly.
So we can't blame her.
Nope, can't. Nope, sure can't. So we bolted that back together, then we have, I don't know, at least maybe a half dozen others in that neighborhood. We went around and checked every one of them to see if any others were.
Am I just the lucky
yours was
one?
the only one, yes.
Take a couple pictures.
Somebody's gotta be lucky.
When you talk to the manufacturer, mention that it was an elected official.
Right.
Oh.
Yeah. So it must have been Friday at 4 o'clock and that one got inspected or something.
Yeah, working out nice now, no flickering in the lights.
Good, good deal.
Yeah.
Alright, moving on to generation, power purchase agreement update.
We got our first bill from Spiegel and McDermott today, so they're working hard on the project. We are, they're at the stage of negotiating with, they're at this stage of, not negotiating, but reviewing the contract with Exelon. It could be back as early as March. We are also looking at the possibility of whether we want to, if you remember a year ago, we had some excess capacity that was not counted towards in our existing purchase power agreement. Because the last time we renewed our purchase power agreement, with Ameren, the Prairie State enterprise was not rated for sale. The capacity was not rated for sale. So this year we made $22,400 on the sale of that capacity from June 1 through May 30th that year. And so we're looking at whether we want to auction, go all the way to auction, or sell in a pre-auction agreement like we did last year, that capacity. We're reviewing, we can only sell that which we don't have to use somewhere else. If you remember, we took a slice of that capacity last year and applied it to the increase. So when you purchase power, you also have to own the capacity. In other words, you have to buy somewhere out there a piece of metal that will produce that power, whether it's a wind plant in Kansas or actually wind and solar actually can't. Either let's say a coal plant in Illinois or a gas turbine in wherever. You have to own that capacity, and solar and wind isn't necessarily available because they're not consistently available enough to count towards capacity. So I wish I hadn't mentioned that because that just makes it more complicated. So forget about solar and wind. But for those sources of energy that MISO regards as reliable enough to put in the market for capacity, you have to have enough to cover your needs, plus what's called a reserve margin. So they increased that reserve margin last year, and so we had to find another sliver to cover those costs, and we used a little bit of our Prairie State and we sold the rest. We're discussing how much we're really supposed to have based on not just what we have actually purchased, our 10 megawatt, actually 11 megawatt capacity range. We haven't ever gotten close to that. We're arguing with Dynergy that we should be able to count that towards our reserve margin because we've got our studies, we've done our reviews. The chance we're going to need that last megawatt is virtually nil. So we should be able to apply that towards our reserve margin and sell more of our capacity, or even if we have some left over, sell that capacity as well. So we're having that debate right now. So I hope I've made that somewhat clear. So that's the biggest news, and we should be if we need that's a discussion stage right now. But if we had gone to auction last year, we would have made a lot more money. Because although there's a lot of people upset about this, the auction in our region, where Prairie State is, the price there was 7 to 8 times as much as it was anywhere else. Nobody really predicted this. Some people have speculated that some of the larger power companies sold their capacity into another market, PJM, a little farther east, to create a shortage of capacity in the MISO region that we were selling ours in. We would have made at least 3 times as much money if we had gone to auction, but nobody knew that. So that's one of the things we're looking at when it comes to this.
It's the lack of a crystal ball.
That's Kirkwood and Fulton, hundreds of thousands of dollars. We don't have nearly that much, so we would have made, tens of thousands of dollars. Instead of 22.4, we might have made 80.
That could have overlaid some more streets.
That could have overlaid some more streets. It could have.
Put more lines underground.
Put more lines underground.
That's right.
Accelerated the purchase of that.
Yeah, that's right. Right.
That's not sewers.
Yeah.
So, anyway, so that's the report from the purchase power agreement.
All right, moving on to Kincaid Solar application.
I approved the application. They have a building permit. They've got some. Mark has given them it's not an invoice, they've told them exactly how much they're gonna have to pop. They have to pay for all the new equipment. We put it in, but they pay for it. So that project.
Just the metering equipment.
The metering, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. They're special metering, yeah, sorry.
Meters themselves, they need to be bi-directional
Right.
meters. And I've sent those off and just got them back today, actually. They've been modified and they've been working and they've got quite a bit of conduit and the inverters and some things installed inside. They've got quite a bit of it done. They've got all the roof work, all the panels put up yet. I'm sure that takes some time.
All those cement blocks are up there.
I saw those. I'm not sure. I don't know if that's how they're gonna install them. Then they wouldn't necessarily physically attach to the roof. They might just somehow use the blocks to, I don't know. I noticed all of them there too, but I'm not sure if that's the same project or not. There's just a little bit.
Yeah, they do, they are one of the benefits of Jasper. Anyway, so we will have our first net metering customer, and we're working with Summit Data Tech to make sure that if Kincaid's were to generate more power in a month than they need, we are obligated to buy that back from them, based on federal law and state law and
Municipal.
yeah, and one might argue what's just and right and good. So we need to make sure that our billing can, and we wouldn't actually write them a check, we'd give them a credit, and that would eventually spend that credit. So, great.
All right, moving on to distribution, capital budget requests.
We don't have any capital, we don't generate any power here, so we don't have any capital requests for generation or distribution, basically.
Yeah. Let me generate power at Kincaid's here for too long.
Is that what
No.
power is saying?
No.
I know.
And if the town goes dark, their thing shuts off, so we don't try to run the town off of Mike's solar power. This we burn that out real quick. Okay, so under GIS development, that's one of those projects that Mark really gets excited about, because that would actually be, and I'm happy to not do this if you guys are not copacetic with it, but that would actually be the next step with Midland GIS to do stormwater mapping. So it really isn't an electric project, but we've charged all the GIS to mark up the now. So
You got broad shoulders.
the rest of it is all everything else
Deep pockets.
is all about Mark. The 28,000 for the half-ton four-wheel drive truck is not stripped down yet. I think the base price, based on the last state contract, 22,600. So that has some of the options, but not all of them. And I'm not sure if that price will be. I don't know if that price is still good until April. So there's a little padding in there. We might actually let Mark have power windows.
Heater.
Heater.
We got
summertime.
We got a car.
Okay.
No, there's a heater. And then the $85,000. Remind me what URD stands for, Mark.
Underground residential distribution.
Thank you.
Basically underground wire.
Yeah. That would be the cable to go under the conduit we put in this year. So that finishes the boring project.
As opposed to the exciting project?
Well, Depending on who you talk and what day, it might not be the boring project or the exciting project, or the
Yeah.
Can't say.
recorders. Yeah. Tedious project, I'd say.
Alright, moving on to fiberglass light pole bid.
Oh, and then $5,000 was
Alright.
put in the street, and that's high also. Street lights along Jefferson Street along our new sidewalk. It was one of the requests that we got from the neighbors. So, and that would, the idea would we put in.
Decorative tree lights, like that.
No, this
Probably
one
not.
number was just, this would
Cobra head,
cover new Cobra heads
Oh,
along
okay.
the poles on the opposite side of the street.
but we do the LED. So,
Where's that at?
We're putting the new sidewalk in front of this, in front of the
For the high
school.
school.
For the high school.
There, it's a little dark there. That was one of the comments we
What did
got.
we decide on the sidewalk behind, over here on Columbia Street? Along the tracks? Didn't we talk about lighting in there?
We got,
We put in some,
on mine.
yeah. We put in 4.
You're talking
I'm
about
talking about down here,
the north end of it.
north end,
North end.
behind all these houses.
I don't think we've ever talked about
Yeah.
those. It was
We
always
talked
been-
about it.
Did we?
I remember talking about it.
We talked about that on the retreat, because I brought it up.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody brought it to me.
Yeah.
It's awful dark.
Yeah, it's
Oh, up
real
by,
dark. It's from Broome Street to,
Rodney Griffin.
yeah, right
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right.
The Rodney Griffin.
Yeah.
Trying to light the sidewalk better.
Yeah, because it's dark back
Yeah,
there.
no,
A lot
it
of
is.
people walking at night,
I
especially this, you know, like tonight.
Oh, yeah, okay.
There was quite a few people walking it tonight, and it was dark. There's no lights back there at all.
There, you're right. And along the, actually along the trail too. It's pretty dark.
The
That's
trail.
the walking.
That's what I'm
Oh,
talking
you're
about.
talking. Yeah.
That's what it, yeah, from Bruton
Yeah.
to Rodney
Right.
Griffin, there's no,
That's
there's no poles or anything back there.
And I don't know if you could run like wire and just stick them on the rail of the fence
Some type of
post,
Fence post lighting.
fence post lighting, you know, just give a little light or something back there. You wouldn't have to telephone poles or light poles or nothing like that.
I'll add that.
Even maybe solar power.
Since most people are gonna be doing their walking shortly after dark anyway.
Yeah, I mean,
That
solar
makes
power
sense.
would probably
Don't
work.
have to necessarily work.
You get
all
early
night
morning.
long.
Yeah, they wouldn't have to work all
Yeah,
night
right
long,
bumper,
but
too.
You wouldn't want nothing too bright.
Then, yeah, I was gonna say, if you light that right, have something here.
yeah, we'd have to figure out a way to change it down.
Well, and that's one of the places where maybe we choose a light with a short cutoff, so it lights the sidewalk, but it doesn't spill over into.
Yeah.
We could have motion sensitive lights, so when somebody's walking, they come on, and nobody walking, they go off.
We'll take those.
That seems like a lot of money.
Or just,
Nah, it's not that much.
I thought about it, we have a sidewalk light up.
There you go.
I threw a motion sensor light on my garage.
It's been getting late.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
we're not talking about
No,
that.
I do remember we talking about that.
Yeah.
So you might, see what that costs, maybe put that in there,
Mm-hmm.
see if we get that done this year.
Okay, now we can move on to the.
Alright, now moving on to the fiberglass light pole bid.
Got a bid tab there in your packet. It's just, these are 5 fiberglass streetlight poles, just to have some on hand and one that we had never gotten installed in Dexter subdivision. Now that they've started to build houses around the cul-de-sac, we've had a request to get that streetlight put in. So, and these would be for future subdivision development too. These are the fiberglass style that we've been putting in all the new subdivisions. So it's just,
And these are high pressure sodium. Alright.
well, these are
Oh, these are
just,
the poles.
just the poles.
That's just the poles.
It's just a 16-foot fiberglass pole that direct buries in the ground 3 feet, and then the light goes on top of it.
And Shakespeare is a dial.
Shakespeare's the manufacturer of fiber, yeah. They do a lot of fiberglass poles of all different, not just for street lights.
It's not the same company. As far as we know, it's nothing to do with pizza.
Unfortunately. Only having 3 pieces. So, and then
All their bids are.
two of the bidders were kind enough to include the shipping freight in their price per pole. The others said, well, it's an estimated 18% of the total order. So I never did verify if that means their cost or my cost, so I did it my cost instead of the highest. And if it comes out better, great, but hopefully it would be no worse than 18% of our total invoice. So after all that, FR stands for Fletcher Reinhardt, I want to clarify that. Even after adding $243.90 of estimated freight, and they have the lowest total bid.
Need those tonight?
No, those wouldn't necessarily have to be done right away, but it just, there is a 9-week lead time on them though, so.
Might be better just.
Yeah, waiting 2 more weeks, is there about 11, you know?
I mean, there's no reason to suspect that your freight costs are.
I don't think I've underestimated.
Right. So Fletcher Reinhardt's bid, which even with the liberal cost of shipping, still wins.
Yeah.
So there's really, does anybody have a reason why they would want to delay? Not that we would love to have a motion to approve the lowest and best bid from Fletcher Reinhardt.
Alright, do I hear a motion to accept the bid from Fletcher
So moved.
Reinhardt?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Alright, we'll get the pole.
Alright, anything other in electric department? Alright, other,
I basically want to know if you guys had somewhat lengthy discussions with, well, several discussions with Greg Modlish. I haven't heard back from him since we discovered the fact that the savings from water meters, even if our water meters were 5% or more off, we think that he kind of took the wrong number and tripled the potential savings. So, which, you know, because it's a little bit higher. So that would, if that project goes away, that leaves us 2 potential possibilities. One of them is doing a full-scale change-out of street lights to LED, and the payoff on that one after, what was it? I forgot to go. It was $80,000, something like that. But that's after 20 years. And if we finance it for a 15-year bond, the savings would pay for the net annual would be about 0 by the 3rd or 4th year. But that would be hiring a contractor to come in and do them all at once. A lot of people suggest that maybe this is something we want to phase in for a variety of different reasons, including the fact that perhaps maybe we want to see if this is something that citizens of Centralia want. If this is, I mean, whatever we do, somebody's going to not like it. I mean, in Independence, they got a project through financing, and some people loved it, and some people hated the fact that their high-pressure sodium light, which used to light their whole yard, now with the cutoff with the new LEDs, it didn't light their whole yard. It only lit to back at the sidewalk, and so they lost their front yard light, and they were upset about that. So that was one of the comments they got back from several people. So it's one of those things where this project would pay for itself with energy savings. We think the next step would be to, so I guess the next step would be to get a performance grade audit. In other words, get some real solid figures. If it doesn't pencil out, Greg shakes her hand and goes away. If it pencils out, and we decide that this would save money, the preliminary indication is that it would. If he does all that work, and we decide not to do it, then he would charge us for his engineering, which would be, I think he said $15,000, but I think that was on all 3 projects. And then the third project was lighting and HVAC in this building. Do you want him to come back and do a detailed explanation of the project as he sees it at the meeting probably on the 15th or 16th? But on Tuesday, February 16th? Or do you want to? I'm not as excited as I was back when I thought we were going to save a lot of money with the water meters. There's a question from the audience.
Quick question, the savings that were projected, did they include the labor savings for not having to change the bulbs on the existing lights every, 2 to 5 years?
They did not. They looked at the prices. We actually, since we have a cost center for street lighting, it wasn't enough to warrant adding that maintenance cost in there. So they aren't talking about maintenance savings, they're actual, it's a good question. It's not, because I've seen other studies. We did a project in Fulton where there's supposed to be thousands and thousands of dollars in maintenance savings, and they didn't materialize because our costs for maintenance were as high as they were estimated. So that's a good question, but no, that's not where the savings come from.
This pretty much came directly from the cost of power.
Right. And that's one of the reasons why it doesn't,
yeah. It would be significant savings there.
There would be some savings from not changing out lights, but not, and it wasn't enough that he went into that detail. It's part of the reason there is an opportunity cost, because if Mark's changing the street lights, he's not doing something else.
Right, that's the way I look at it more. It's not so much the cost savings of the maintenance, but it's just less that we have to deal with. We're here anyway, but yet we don't need to pull off a project or make time on certain, at least one day a week or one day every other week or something like that to do a lot of street lighting maintenance. So with LEDs, there would be very few, far between on the maintenance, I'm sure.
I'm waiting to hear back from Greg on how much, but how excited are you guys about this project? Okay.
So and one other, I mean, when they're all new
Yeah.
together, and they're also all old together, and down the road there.
Well, we talked about, oddly enough, Mark was talking about the Lakeview, the acorn light, or the decorative lights along Lakeview all went in about the same time, and they're all starting to go out now. So yes and no. So if these lights last for 10 years or so, maybe we're switching to the next technology in 10 years. But or you or you buy in bulk and you're going to spend a summer replacing light bulbs. So that's not the worst. It's a good point. You're probably right, but that's probably not the end of the world if we do that. The other thing is the other thing to look at it when it comes to that project is if you put up the street lights, say we changed out Lakeview, if they're popular, everybody's going to say, why didn't you do my street? Oh, sure you did Lakeview, you didn't do,
Can't please everybody else.
Yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to, even back to like maintenance, and then what, with that, if you try to do the project yourself, I mean, there's talked about taking away from projects, but there's always days when a project can't be worked on because you've had 4 inches of rain, and so, but you can always work on streetlights because they're right along the street, obviously, so you can get to them, whether it's too muddy to do something else. So even if you decided to try to maybe base a little bit off this study, come up with, what you might wanna spend in a year and try to budget that and have X amount of years to replace them all. Once if it was decided that, yeah, that's what we wanna do, there would be time, I think, in those years for the crew to do that work.
I think that would be the better way to go.
I kinda tend to agree, you know.
All right, well, unless something comes up that shocking from one of the other two pieces, we probably will not bring Greg back. I might have to buy him lunch because it's just good soul. We'll all work out.
Alright. Any as may arise?
I did have one real quick one. We do have a planning and zoning committee, actually two, planning and zoning committee this Thursday. We have an annexation that we're, and that will be on the February 16th agenda for you guys. I think I mentioned this last week. And I asked Merritt today. Technically, I think the Board of Aldermen has to recommend it to Board of Planning and Zoning Board. But he said that the that we have in the past allowed an advertisement in the planning and zoning meeting as being adequate. Does anybody have any objection moving forward with that and the annexation of what's essentially one law? Okay.
It's a voluntary annexation.
It's a voluntary annexation. Neighbors will be notified.
Yeah.
Good.
What was the year on that, sir?
The planning and zoning is this Thursday, February 4th at 6 p.m. And the hearing before the council will be February 16th. Remember, we have a Tuesday meeting that week because Monday's a holiday. But we can only have a hearing. We can't vote on the ordinance until an additional 14 days has passed. So we'll probably do a recess meeting so we can do it. All right.
I have one as I rise. I'll be out of town for a job next week, so I won't be here for next Monday's meeting, but I'll call in. I'll listen.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
We will have the state champion cheerleaders here.
Yes.
Which you get to
We might need to help you.
I'm moving, Jared.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.